Now we're going to go ahead and create our category views. Now this, of course, is to have one view that's a list of all the possible categories, and then another one that is the actual detail view of a category, which would actually contain a list of playlists that are in that category. So let's go ahead and do this. Inside of views.py, we're going to go ahead and import from django.views.generic. We'll go ahead and import the list view, and we might as well import the detail view as well. Next, I'm going to go ahead and do from.models, import category, and we'll just go ahead and say class category list view, takes in a list view, and we'll just give it a query set as the argument, and we'll do category.objects.all, right? So in this .all, I also might want to make sure that active is being true. So perhaps I want to have additional items inside of here, as in a model manager and a query set manager. But I don't necessarily need to do that. So I'll just go ahead and say filter active equals to true. Simple enough, because I don't really need a query set manager if I just have one minor thing related to query set lookups, which is this. Okay, so that's pretty much it for our category list view. There's really not a whole lot I need to add to it, right? You know, I probably will have like, hey, how many actual playlists fit in this category? Perhaps I want to display that, but perhaps I don't. So I'm actually going to leave that out for now, and we'll leave the categories just as is. I'm not going to really use the tags in this case. I'll just be using those tags to display our playlist when we get there. Next is going to be slightly more complicated, and that's going to be our category detail view. And of course, this is going to be a list view as well. And we can actually declare that same query set. Okay, so we do want to think about what actually a category detail view would be. And this would actually be another list view for playlist. So I am going to leave it in as a list view, and I'm actually going to override this query set itself to being something different. So the very first thing that I'm going to do here is I'm going to define get context data, and it's going to return self, and then we'll just go ahead and do the context is equal to the superclass get context data, and return that context. So the reason I'm doing this is because in here, I'm going to go ahead and pass in the context of objects, as in what is this category going to be. So category.objects.get slug equals to self.keywordargs.get slug. Now, we obviously know that this could potentially bring back two of the exact same things. So instead what I'll do is say try obj equals to that, and then except if that category does not exist. So category.does not exist. Then we'll just go ahead and raise HTTP 404. And then we'll run another exception if the category is multiple objects returned. Then again, I'll go ahead and raise a HTTP 404. Okay. And then after that, I'll just go ahead and say except pass. So the final exception, actually, we'll go ahead and say object equals to none. Okay. So now I'll go ahead and do context of the object is equal to that object. Simple enough. Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. We'll see. So I do need to import HTTP 404. So we'll go from django.http, import HTTP 404. And then next, what I'll need to import is the actual playlist. So it's another list view for playlist. So let's go ahead and import the playlist. So from playlist.models, we're going to import playlist. And now I'm going to define get query set of this. And yet again, I'm going to go ahead and reference the self.keywordargs.get. So this time I'll go ahead and put it here, as in slug is equal to that. Now playlist objects.filter category __ slug equals to slug. Look at that. Okay, so the reason I know I can use this is because inside of the playlist itself, I have a foreign key, which means I can use those double underscores to get the field values in whatever that field is. So 2 underscores here give me access to all of this. Thus I use slug, and it's going to be equal to that. And now again, yet another list view. So if we look into our playlist views, what did we have for all of those list views? And that's this mixin right here. So that also means that I'm going to add a new file inside of playlists called mixins.py. And I'm actually going to cut out this mixin. Let's get rid of that print context, and let's copy everything above it. Put in these mixins. Let's just make sure we have everything actually in here that we need. I don't actually think I need to import anything for this mixin. It doesn't look like I do. So playlist mixin is just like that. Now inside of my playlist views, I'll go ahead and import this mixin. There's a reason I'm doing this. So from mixins, import the playlist mixin. And of course, the reason I'm doing this is so that in my views, we have from playlist.mixins import playlist mixin. And so we can add the exact same templates that we've been doing. And this time we might need to override our title itself to being based off of the category. So let's go ahead and grab that context and say title equals to obj.title. Okay, so in this case, obj will have to be not none. So if obj is not none, because there is certainly the possibility that one of these exceptions is not what gets triggered, but something else, and therefore I did obj is not none. Okay, cool. So now we have a couple of views here, but actually before we go any further, what I want to do is ensure that this actually never gets triggered, or hopefully never gets triggered based off of the slug argument itself, which means in my models, I have this slug here, but I don't generate a unique slug at all. So let's go ahead and do that. So from django.db.models.signals, we're going to import the pre-save signal. And then from django_flex.db.receivers, we're going to go and import our unique slug. What do we call it? I think it's unique slug receiver function. No, unique slugify pre-save. Okay, so back into our models here, unique slugify pre-save. Come down here, pre-save.connect. And that receiver function, sender being our category. Okay, so we made some changes to the models. What do we need to do? Python manage.py, make migrations, and Python manage.py migrate, and Python manage.py test every time. Okay, cool. So that's going to take a minute, but while that's happening, let's go into our categories here and go to urls.py, because we are going to be having our category URLs be within the category itself. Okay, cool. So the test actually worked out, so we can clear this out, close down the terminal, and we're going to go and import django.urls. We'll go and import the path argument, and then from .views, we're going to go and import the category list view and the category detail view, which I believe are the two names we gave it. Category list view, category detail view. Great. So now let's go ahead and declare URL patterns equals to a list. The first one is just going to be empty, and this one will be our category list view as view. The next one is going to be a path for our slug. So slug being slug, and this one is our category detail view as view. And there we go. So we now have our URL paths. I'm going to go ahead and have a trailing slash here. So now with this inside of Django Flex, I'll go ahead and go into my URLs here. And I want to make sure that the include is in here as well. So inside of Django URLs path, we'll go ahead and import include, much like what we see up here. And now what I'll go ahead and do is say path and category. And then we'll go ahead and include the category.urls. This actually, I think, is categories.urls, the app name, and URLs. So let's have a trailing slash on that. And let's run the server now. Oops. run server. And oh, we get an error in our views. Back into our views. This should be playlists. There we go. And now let's go ahead and go into category. And we get a template does not exist. No surprise there. But I'm going to go ahead and do comedy and see if I get anything there. I get a page not found. So perhaps that category just doesn't exist yet. So categories, no categories. So I'll go ahead and do comedy, comedy, refresh. Now I've got that category showing up. Let's go into a movie. The Avengers is not a comedy. Let's go ahead and just say, I don't know, Ant-Man. Ant-Man is a little bit closer to a comedy, maybe, I guess. I don't know. That doesn't matter. It's more about showing what this data is. And what do you know? Ant-Man is in there. And it's going off of a template that already exists. That template does need to have a get absolute URL method, which we'll do in a moment. But let's go ahead and add in a TV show season with a category. So I'm going to go into Parks and Rec as the parent here. Category being comedy. And we'll do season, 4. And then we'll go ahead and make sure it's published. And I'll go ahead and hit save. Go back into the comedy here. I'm getting that season showing up. That, of course, is not something I want to have happen. So that means inside of my views, I need to update my get query set method here just a little bit. And this will give me a nice little new model manager, or really a query set manager. And this is going to be define. And we'll call this movie or show. And we hit self. And then we're going to go ahead and do return self.filter. And this actually brings us back to that Q lookup that we did before. So in here, I can actually use that Q lookup twice for 2 different options here. Of course, this is going to be a type of movie or a type of show. So how do we do that? Well, it's going to be simple. It's type equals to playlist type choices movie, or capital MOVIE. And the same thing is true for show. So now that I've got this movie or show query set, what can I do? I can just jump back into here and do movie or show, save it, refresh, season's gone. Okay, that would be true for other playlists that might fit under this category as well. Literally the category itself, but also just that it's a different type object that is a playlist. So that's pretty cool. So there is one more thing I want to do to my general URLs, and that is to go back into Django Flicks and URLs. What I want to do is also include this to being categories as another option for how I might look at this, right? So if somebody accidentally does categories. Now, we could use a regular expression to handle this, but I'm not going to go that far right now. I'll just use the regular path argument that's just pointing to the same thing. And then in my models, what I want to do is say define get absolute URL, and we're going to go ahead and return the slug itself. So it's going to be simply category and then the slug. Okay, so that will always be our get absolute URL method. So now we need to do a couple things for our templates. So inside of templates, I need to go into this playlist list template and get rid of all of the things that are currently there. I think our movie detail might show it. No, it was our featured list that shows it. Okay, so our featured list is now what we actually want to use for each one of those instances in our playlist here, just to make those a little bit more consistent. Obviously, I could change both of them if I was so inclined, but I save that now. It gives me Ant-Man. And in this case, it's not actually getting the related items, but it's rather just the actual instance, which is another reason we're not going to be using featured here. So I can go ahead and cut this condition statement here, paste it there, get rid of the dot related, and change item to being instance. Okay, movie equals to the instance, show equals to the instance, and elif instance is show. There we go. So we tab this in. There we go. Ant-Man. Sweet. Okay, so granted, I probably don't need the title and description any longer, but to fit with what we had before, I'll leave it in with that. Okay, cool. So now we definitely have a way to go see our movies. And if I added a TV show to the comedy category, into TV shows, The Office, let's add that category in here. You might already have it. If you do, that's okay, of course. And we bring that in, and now, of course, it goes to the correct place. Look at that. How cool. So now we actually have pretty robust category views, except for the actual category list itself, right? So let's go ahead and create this. And I'm going to do it exactly where the template suggests. So it's going to be the app name. So categories, and then category list.html. Now this, of course, is coming from our class-based view. This is the default for all of that. I'm going to literally copy base playlist.html here just to get some of the default things that we want. The category itself this time, it's no longer going to be, well, actually, I think we might have passed in a title, but I don't really care if I need a title in here or not. All I'm going to do is say category or categories, and then the H1. Again, I don't need a actual context argument for title. I can literally just write out what title I want in this case. Okay, so again, we will want to loop through these things. This time I'm just going to do an H3, and I'll go ahead and link it. And we'll, we already created that get absolute URL method. So let's close that off, and instance.get absolute URL. Save that. And now we go in here. I can actually see the various categories that would come through. Okay, so categories coming back in here, add a new category, action, and let's make sure our Slugify is working. I hit save and continue. Sure enough, it is. If I do another category with the exact same thing, I hit save and continue. Sure enough, it is. Granted, we should probably test that. I think you have enough skills now to ensure that that's happening. I'm not going to do every test in this case. Okay, so there we go. We've got action in here. Granted, I don't have any things that fit under this category of action at this point. So let's go ahead and add one. And there we go. Action. Cool. So now that we have our templates, we should pretty much have everything that we need related to all of the categories. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that we would need in here for our category views, and I don't think we do. I think we have the list view, and that's fine. One of the things that we might consider doing here is filtering based off of the idea that there is actually categories or actually playlists associated to this. So I'm going to go ahead and do that just as a nice little bonus. So typically what I would do is actually make this into a model query set and a query set manager, but I'm going to keep it nice and simple and just do it in here, just so you know what it is that you could do here. So we're going to go ahead and do from django.db.models. We're going to import the count argument here. And then what I'm going to do is on all, I'm going to do dot, or actually we can do it on the filter itself. And I'm going to do dot annotate. And I'll say PL count equals to count of the playlist set. Okay, so playlist set being that this category does not have playlist listed here at all. So we know that that as a foreign key is going to be underscore set. And now I'm going to go ahead and filter that PL count is greater than or equal to 1. You could also just say greater than 0, either one. Okay, so this should actually give me a new query set that shows up in my categories. Let's go ahead and make sure we've got everything running here. Oh yes, haha. I'm glad we saw this exception. So we actually see that it says playlists on the exception, which is something I didn't actually verify before I created that. And that's because, of course, we changed the related name for category into playlist. So maybe you caught that. I definitely did not. So let's change this back to being playlist, or change it to playlist, and then run the server again. And now when we go into categories, we still see these. These do have a count. So let's go in here and do categories again. This time I'm going to go ahead and add drama as a category and refresh in here. It's not showing up. Okay, so that's when you would absolutely want to use the annotate feature and count up all of the instances of the playlist, which would basically be giving us, something like playlist.objects.count, but more specifically filtering it based off of each slug, right? So slug equal, or actually probably more appropriately the actual ID or primary key. But this is just a quick and easy way to do that, which I think is really nice. Thus another benefit to be using foreign keys or generic foreign keys in general. Cool. So now we've got our category views done. It's time to move on to our tag views.